Sad news out of the NFL. Owner and steward, as he called himself, of the Indianapolis Colts, Jim Irsay, has passed away. And why aren't more teams better at the Tush Push? Coming up on today's mailbag edition of Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all the everydayers out there. Thanks for hanging with us as we roll toward the 2025 season. If you're new to the program, welcome. Please hit that subscribe button. It helps us out tremendously. It helps out the algorithm so new folks can find the show as well. And if you're already subbed up, just hit the thumbs up. Let us know you stopped by. And, of course, you can subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you listen to this podcast. And obviously, it's a mailbag day for us here. So a story that we didn't expect to talk about today, which is the unfortunate news that Jim Irsay has passed away. Relatively young guy, still very interesting owner of the Indianapolis Colts. And so there's some other bigger, longer questions from the mailbag that we might actually push into tomorrow's show too. But this is something obviously really big news in the NFL when one of the 32 owners passes away. And I just want to start with the statement from the Indianapolis Colts that kind of tells a little bit of the story about Jim Irsay, and only 65 years old too. Like he's not the oldest owner in the NFL, and wouldn't have been the guy necessarily picked that would have not been around anymore, even though, according to the Indianapolis Colts, who are devastated to announce that their beloved CEO and owner Jim Irsay passed away peacefully in his sleep yesterday afternoon. Jim's dedication and passion for the Indianapolis Colts, in addition to his generosity, commitment to the community, and most importantly, his love for his family, were unsurpassed. Deepest sympathies go to his daughters, Carly Irsay Gordon, Casey Foyt, Kaylin Jackson, and his entire family, as we grieve with them. The statement goes on to say that some of Jim's fondest memories came from his youth working training camps in Baltimore and growing relationships with players, coaches, and staff whom he considered his extended family. He worked in every department before he was named the youngest general manager in team history in 1984, which I didn't realize, when the Colts arrived in Indianapolis. So he's been running the Colts since 1984, since they have been in Indy. After he took sole ownership in 1997, he led the Colts to a long series of division titles, brought the city its first Super Bowl championship, along with Peyton Manning and others. Jim's love and appreciation for the NFL, in addition to its history, tradition, and principles, influenced him to become a steward of the game throughout his 50-plus years in the league. Jim's generosity can be felt all over Indianapolis, the state of Indiana, and the country. He made philanthropy a daily endeavor. He never hesitated to help countless organizations and individuals live better lives. Music was one of Jim's passions, and his ability to share his band and collection with millions of people across the world brought him tremendous joy. Simply put, he wanted to make the world a better place, and that philosophy never wavered. Jim will be deeply missed by his family, the Colts organization, and fans everywhere, but we remain inspired by his caring and unique spirit. The very end of that unique spirit, I think, is the best way to explain Jim Irsay. He was one of the quirky owners in the NFL, and the term steward, which comes from Jim Irsay. He said he was quoted as saying that he likes to be thought of more of as steward of the franchise of the game than an owner. And he looked at things in an interesting way, and he was an interesting guy. And one of the things I think you do start to lose in this day and age in the NFL, and how big money of an operation it is, you start to lose the family-owned aspect, even though there are many families that still own the teams. And now, you can sell off portions of your football team to private interests, and as the league starts to go in that direction and you kind of have shareholders, it becomes less of a community and less family, which I don't love. But with Jim Irsay, did still feel like a family-owned kind of a football team. And I know it's hard to compete if you are a family-owned football team, depending on which family you come from. because it is such a big money thing. We saw that with the Raiders. So teams do have to sell off part of their entire franchise just because you have to compete. Even the 49ers sold 6% of their franchise last week, I think, because they needed cash money to give to Brock Purdy because they had to put $100 million into a
escrow,
in the escrow fund, right? And even these, what we perceive as rich owners don't just have $100 million liquid hanging out to do that in some of these organizations. So it's really interesting the place we're at here. And Jim Irsay just kind of reminded me of that. And I'd kind of been thinking about where the league is as far as a big money enterprise, and much it used to be just family owned operate. Like, it's insane how much more these franchises are worth than they used to be.
Oh, billions. They go up in a rapid rate. And, he inherited from his father. It looks like it's going to stay in the family, at least till further notice. Looks like his daughter's going to get more and more involved, and she has been quite involved. Obviously a very colorful and memorable guy, and compared to a lot of the stoic owners you don't hear much from, but he would tell you what he thought, and could even be abrasive. But while you were talking about that, I did a quick search because you talked about his love for music, and I remember seeing a special on NFL Network or whatever about his music collection, and I urge everyone to check it out because it's a lot of the stuff I'm into. I mean, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 either drum kits or guitars that the Beatles used on stage. I mean, he's got Bob Dylan stuff in the Jim Irsay collection, a bunch of Clapton stuff, David Gilmour from Floyd, Kurt Cobain, like his music collection is kind of worldwide known. And I think that sort of sums him up, fun guy, got the most out of life,
Absolutely. And I do, as odd as he was at times, and I'm sure there were some Colts fans that were frustrated and didn't like the way he ran the team. And other times, I think I like when there's quirky, like a lot of people really hate Jerry Jones. I like that there's individual personalities and different styles that organizations are, and quirky personalities. And even if you don't like them, just being different and not just so buttoned up and homogenous around the NFL. And Jim Irsay was certainly one of the unique.
100%. So he will certainly be missed and lost. And Colts teams were pretty good. And I guess we'll have to see where this leaves the organization and franchise going forward too.
And there's a ton of owners around the NFL that can't say that they brought home a title.
Right. Absolutely. The Manning era, in the Luck era,
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the Indianapolis Colts, this is the one team I have a big question on with one of our questions in the mailbag today. And I believe it is, let me get the right question asker here. And I'm bouncing around everywhere in my Twitter DMs to find the right question from the right folks here. So it is from Joey Bag of Donuts, who says, why aren't more teams better at the Tush Push? And it's, this is it's like a Philadelphia Eagles only play. It's just a goal line play. It's not like that wild of a play, right? It's just a short yardage play that teams have been running forever, and they run it a certain way and a little bit different, and have been really successful at it. And I wanted to look up some of the success rates, and some folks have kind of, have different numbers for what is considered tush push, what is considered not a tush push. But mostly what I can tell is the Eagles somewhere around an 86% success rate. I've seen more like 81, and I've seen more like 90 in some ways, depending on the down and distance and how far, they have to go to be quote unquote successful. But somewhere around 86%, while the rest of the league is closer to 76%. So it's not like teams are bad. They're still, 76% of the time successful in these such plays. And so my question to you, Matt, is can't teams just close that 10% gap, or are the Eagles just that much better? And if they are, why would they be that much better? And the thing I really think about is, what's the difference between the Eagles and the Colts? The Colts have talent on the offensive line. They have the offensive coordinator from the Eagles, so they should know every reason why it works and how to do the play successfully. In my mind, the Colts should be just as good with Anthony Richardson. Is it just how much Jalen Hurts can squat? Is that really the 10% difference between the Eagles and the rest of the league? What else would it be?
I don't have a great answer, because it's coincidentally, I was asked this yesterday on a Steelers only podcast, and the question was, why weren't they better? Why didn't they even try it or good at it with Justin Fields? I'm like, that's a great question. I can understand Russell Wilson not being out there doing it. Okay. Right. He's older, he's smaller. Great. They also have a good center, and that, the Steelers, I'm talking about Frazier, and the Colts have had a good center over the years too. I think the center is intricately important, but last year I thought the Eagles would fall off with it, because Kelsey retired. I mean, he's so low to the ground. He's so quick that not only is he an awesome center and smart, but his style of playing center seems perfect for it too. No one's going to get lower than him. No one's going to beat him off the ball. And that's a heck of a start. And you have the big, powerful quarterback. But still, my short answer, and it's just total speculation, is the weeks are really short and no one practices it. You know what I mean? I think that's probably it. They're just not comfortable doing it.
I think you nailed it. I have one big reason that's along those lines I want to get to next. And we've got questions like, what even is a franchise quarterback? How would we term that? And are there some teams that might have one of those guys that we're not even talking about? And much more from this Peacock and Williamson offseason mailbag next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. NBA playoffs, they're in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances. It was a wild one in the fourth quarter last night. Major momentum shifts, can't miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action because FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off. Live action during the game, same-game parlays, player props, performance trends, and fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. And of course, you can still bet on NFL football. Tons of weekly lines already available at FanDuel. NFL futures for next year. You can bet on your favorite team to win the next Super Bowl. And how could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Just head to FanDuel.com, download the app, and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. So make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Last note on the Tush Push, and really it's something that I hope we don't have to talk about a lot.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of airtime. Yeah,
and people keep asking about it, and it's an interesting topic. First of all, Tush Push is still a small sample size of plays in the NFL. So I think year to year, the Eagles are clearly good at it, but they practice it the most. And I think the term I would use is buy-in. I think a lot of offensive coordinators are like, well, that play is beneath us. Let's do this other thing that I've worked up that's a lot more fun. And I'm kind of with those guys. And the thing that I talked about with like the Tush Push is like, it shouldn't be illegal. It should be, as long as you're legal formation, line up, run it, make other teams stop it. It's just boring, which is why I don't like it, which I want to go away because it's boring. The thing is, I think more likely more teams are going to start doing it. More teams are going to buy in and know that it's a viable play for them. And I think of a team like the Colts and you have a young quarterback, like that's a free first down, man. Why aren't you practicing this play? And so to me, I think most
they can even run it with Warren. I mean, you're going to see teams do it with tight ends and that kind of stuff too, right?
Yeah, put a nose tackle in there.
Anyone that can take a snap, right?
Because one of the things that's tough to stop with that play is just you have more mass.
It's just
defense.
Force equals MA, and it's a lot of M.
Yeah, the force, the defense doesn't have as much weight to combat it up front, and the defense has to play it more. You have to play it straight because if you just load up to stop that one thing, the offense can load up to do one thing, but the defense has to still play the edges, or you just run free.
I want to see someone do this Dan Marino fake spike, fake tush push, throw the touchdown, right?
Or pass,
Yep. And then throw the fade to Justin Jefferson or whatever,
And so that's kind of why I don't like the play because it's just it's like a little loophole and it's like clearly an advantage and it's not fun. And I just don't love the idea of being able to help out a teammate. And that's the other thing is like, what other ways could you help out your teammates if it's legal? Like, why don't you just have one guy who's down on a knee, the running back takes the ball, he runs, and you do the thing like you do when you're a kid and you put your hands together.
Throw him over the fence.
You toss him over the top. Like, who's going to stop that, right? Just let a big man pick you up and carry you over the line. So at what point do we be like, okay, enough is enough? And that's what I think could start to happen is just more teams do more, and then you have to revisit it because it's like, okay, now it happens too much. It's still fairly small sample, and that's why I'm not sure about the percentages and if that could start to get tweaked. And we kind of see the Eagles come down a few points, other teams come up 5%, and now everyone's just kind of 80% success rate.
Or it turns into a total circus and defenses are doing crazy stuff too.
Right.
And,
that's where maybe injuries could come into. What is a franchise quarterback, Matt?
Okay.
Michael has this question. Building off the NFC quarterback discussion that we had last week and similar to what Sando does, how do you guys define a franchise quarterback? Who is currently on your list? It used to be called the Andy Dalton / Kirk Cousins line. We've talked about that a lot. But who is it now? Who is the line that you would call a franchise quarterback? He throws the name Brock Purdy out there, and there's a Brock Purdy question that I want to address as well after he's gotten paid this week and what makes him a successful NFL quarterback. But just simple terms, what is a franchise quarterback to you, Matt?
So I'm often asked, how many wide receiver ones are there in the league? And I always answer, there's not 32, there's 12. I don't throw the – go ahead.
It's possible that one team has two of them and another team has none.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot have none.
Yeah.
And I think that phrase gets thrown around too generously. He's our wide receiver one. Yeah. He's playing the role of your wide receiver one, but he's not a wide receiver one. There aren't a lot of those on the planet. But I think franchise quarterback, I'm a little more lenient on. Now, that doesn't mean elite quarterback. Like right now, I think there's 4 elite quarterbacks. They're all in the AFC. Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow. I think those guys are elite quarterbacks. But I think going down, and this isn't a knock on them, to like the Purdy level guys are still franchise quarterbacks. I mean, basically, I kind of look at it like, are the franchise and the quarterback married? Did they did they say vows at the altar? Now you're the franchise quarterback.
You're married if you have a contract that says so. And
yeah.
You're a franchise quarterback if you have a contract that says so. And to me,
even Drake May is for now until he gets a contract. It doesn't mean he's great.
As a number 3 overall pick.
Yeah.
I would put it this way. It's more like engaged, I guess, than for me because you're not looking for somebody else.
Yeah.
You're a franchise quarterback when you stop looking, when your GM stops looking for someone to replace you.
And you would never totally stop looking unless you've won the elites, But
you're not going to draft, like the Chiefs aren't going to draft a first-round quarterback next year.
No.
But they'll draft another backup guy that, hey, who knows? Maybe he could become Tom Brady or Brock Purdy or whoever. They're not.
Maybe the Giants or even the Titans could take Arch if he's just so unbelievably good and do the Rose and Kyler Murray move.
Yep, absolutely.
And definitely a lot of teams like, let's say Penix just has a not so great year, and I know they don't have a first round pick, but and an ultra quarterback, they're married, but we have an eye for others still,
And here's the thing is that's in the eye of the beholder too, because for me, some teams think they have a franchise quarterback or treat their quarterback like a franchise quarterback, but I'm looking at them like I would be trying to replace this guy. And I think the best example of that recently is the New York Giants. Daniel Jones like a franchise quarterback when he was not. And that's where you get into really big trouble. And so Daniel Jones has always been below that line. Brock Purdy is above that line. How many quarterbacks are above that line in the NFL? Usually at most it's half the league, which is kind of standard, right? And so, I would say 12, 13, 14 guys you could probably start to look at, but it's probably closer to 12 where you're like, this is a franchise quarterback.
Now, it might not be the right decision. Not every marriage works, but like Tua, whether you like it or not, is a franchise quarterback, and they've built their team accordingly. I think that's a big part of it. Like, because Tua's got obvious strengths, accuracy, quick release, get it out. Well, we're not going to ask him to do Jalen Hurts stuff. We're not going to ask Jalen Hurts to do Tua stuff, but they're both franchise quarterbacks. That doesn't mean that they would be in my top 10 on my quarterback list. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. To expand on Purdy a little bit more, is we got a couple of questions about him now that he's been paid, and a lot of people are having trouble accepting that he is a franchise quarterback, being the last pick in the draft, and maybe doesn't quite look physically as imposing as some of the other franchise quarterbacks in the NFL. But he clearly is their franchise quarterback and has been paid accordingly, even though the deal looks, I think, like something that's pretty favorable for the 49ers compared to some of the other deals that are similar with Goff and Tua and some of those players. I would rather have Purdy on his contract than those guys on those contracts, personally. Madridissimo asks, how much of a discount did Purdy supposedly give up because the percentage of the cap looks like less than other guys at signings. It's signing in his average annual value range. Was it the no trade clause? And I would say that it's not the no trade clause. And in fact, Brock Purdy was asked about that and said it wasn't the no trade clause. So I think he was motivated to get it done. The Niners were motivated to get it done with what's gone on in the past recently. And I think one aspect of it versus all the other quarterbacks that have signed similar contracts is Brock Purdy was negotiating from a 7th round contract, rookie contract. He was going to make, and actually he got a bump because the league has this incentive package for players that way outplay their late draft status. So instead of making like $1 million or 1.1, he was going to make $5 million this year. But still, he wasn't a bonus baby first round quarterback. He wasn't going to make $25 million. So he was negotiating from a place where if you don't get a deal done, you're on the last year of your deal and you're making $5 million. And instead of making $25 million. And so you're negotiating from a different place. And Dak Prescott already had a veteran contract. So he's negotiating
their bank accounts are way different.
Yes. And so it affects things. Yeah.
So I'll use a Steeler example. 2 things I want to talk about with this question is, so Jaylen Warren was an undrafted free agent. He's a good player. They found a guy that cost them nothing. Undrafted free agent. Jaylen Warren's made nothing basically in the NFL. So I've suggested, why not just throw 1 more year on his deal, give him $5 million, even if he's worth $7 million, because he's going to say yes, because Mrs. Warren's going to be like, $5 million is a lot of money for us. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of take advantage of those guys to some degree, and Purdy's sort of in the same example. But the way this question was asked, though, is what kind of discount did he give? In some ways, it's a massive one, in that if he said, I'm hitting the open market, that might be the number he is discounted from, is what is true free agent Brock Purdy worth? It's a lot more. I mean, when 5 teams are making offers competing for him.
And then and then you're like, okay, well then it's what, a franchise tag. And so, okay, what's the next 2 years if I play out my contract and then I get franchise tagged? What is that value? Well, I would make more now if I just signed this deal.
Guaranteed money, put it in the bank. And people forget about, like, I get a big check from the Niners. We talked about how Irsay had to write checks or whatever. The Niners had to sell something, so he gets a huge check. Well, that gets you can invest that money. I mean, like, it doesn't stay $100 million for the next 3 years. You give it to your financial investor, and it turns into $120 million.
Yeah, you'd rather have $100 million today than $100 million in 2 years.
Right. I mean, even if you're only getting 3% interest, it's still a lot of money.
Which is why Brock's contract looks better than Goff's, because they got the same amount of money, or they got similar amount of money a couple years later. And so it is definitely a better deal. Why is Purdy
a big chunk of guaranteed money? Like we were having a conversation on my other show. Boy, Josh Allen's not making as much as he could. Of course not. He could ask for $100 million, but he's got like $250 million guaranteed that they just wrote him a giant check for, that he could stick it in a savings account, and if he could buy a bond with it, and it'll still make money. You know what I mean? Like,
Josh Allen's contract was as much of a restructure as it was a full big extension. It was like a little extension. It wasn't like, okay, here's the new big deal like Dak's was. I think that would look a lot bigger for Josh Allen. I think it will look a lot bigger for Josh Allen in probably only a couple more years, because it was just a little short extension, a little restructure, a little, let's get this thing a little further down the road.
Brock Purdy gets that check and then buys 2 car dealerships and 4 McDonald's, or whatever he wants. Right?
He's going to buy a bass boat. That's one of the things he wants.
Okay, that's
which I appreciate.
Small potatoes. Might as well. Nothing.
he's a small potatoes guy. He's a humble dude, which I think is part of it as well. And he talked about he didn't want to be weird like a lot of guys get in these contract negotiations. So level-headed guy, leader, wanted to be there for phase 1 of the workouts. So you love all that, which is why he's successful. Answering the question why he's successful next, and more from the Peacock and Williamson mailbag. So real quick to wrap up the Brock Purdy part of this conversation, and Scott's question on Purdy was, other than opportunity and landing spot, why do you think Purdy succeeded while most other quarterbacks from his class haven't, and how do you scout for it? How do you scout for it is the question that everyone would like to know, and I'd make a lot more money if I knew how to answer that question. But a lot of it is what we just kind of mentioned, and how he's wired, how players are wired, that chip on their shoulder, how hard they work, how they see the football field. There's just so much, and football is still played, quarterback is still played from the neck up, more than it is physically. And as long as you're over the line physically, if you have that ability to see things, to work hard, to be accountable, I thought it was phenomenal. One of the things that Brock Purdy said in his rookie season, it was like his second game. And basically the reporter's like, what is going on right now? Why are you so good? And he's like, oh, I just do what the coaches tell me to do. It's not that difficult,
I think that's a big thing in this instance too. He's like Shanahan's joystick,
Yes, absolutely. And so you can't take opportunity and landing spot out of it, because if Trey Lance was good and never injured, Brock Purdy's a backup right now.
I say this all the time, and the older I get, the less I care about the quarterback themselves and more I care about their landing spot. Again, if they were stocks and I had to invest my money in them, I'm going to invest in the teams I trust, the Chiefs, the Eagles, et cetera, the Niners, because I think they'll get the most out of the players. Purdy's a little odd, though, because he could be an A+ from the neck up and all that. But a lot of times, just because where he's drafted, he may never have got even regular season reps. He looked kind of good in the preseason. Maybe we'll keep him. Maybe we won't. Whatever.
Something just to make the team as the last pick in the draft. There was 3 guys ahead of him in his rookie training camp, and one of them was already an expensive veteran that had had the team already in Jimmy Garoppolo, and then you had the number 3 pick in the draft the year before. And early on, Kyle Shanahan's like, this guy, Brock Purdy, might be better than all of them. And what's funny is landing spot's great, but why didn't landing spot help Trey Lance? So there is definitely something there.
Right. There's apples to apples. Right.
He's more fully formed, and the guts and the ability to. This is Brock Purdy's superpower. If you are unfamiliar with Brock Purdy's game, it is the anticipation. Brock Purdy sees it, has the guts to throw it early, and in a lot of cases kind of has to throw it early. He'll make throws before a wide receiver makes his break, and you see a lot of young quarterbacks that struggle in the NFL. They wait to see it open before they throw it, and that's the biggest difference, and that's why Brock Purdy can overcome arm strength. Anticipation, number 1 key, and the guts to make some of those throws. And sometimes they end up being look a little weird. You're like, well, where'd you throw that ball? Well, actually, he expected the receiver to break that route 1 yard earlier, but he's throwing it before the break. And it makes for an awesome orchestration when it works with him and Shanahan are on the same page. And then there's times where it's muddied and he has to make a throw later, make a big boy throw. And he's not as good in those situations where that first round bust of a quarterback is awesome and has all his arm strength, but just can't see it, can't let his mind and let, I think probably Justin Fields is the most perfect example. Like he throws with no anticipation.
No, see it, throw it.
And like he waits to see it before he throws it, and then you get sacked. Brock Purdy's the opposite of that.
And I'm not suggesting he's to be quite to this level ever, but that's Breeze, that's Burrow. Like the ball comes out on time or before. People don't understand how smart these coaches are and how much, going back to Walsh and marrying up the footwork with the route concept down to tenths of a second and how uncoverable that is. Montana to Rice on a perfect slant where the ball's thrown perfectly on perfect time is like an uncoverable situation. And it's just not many joysticks out there can execute the coach's vision like these guys. And because you have a huge arm, you can get away with it, especially throughout your whole career. I can be late if I have Matthew Stafford's arm because the ball gets there quicker,
Right. Yeah. And Josh Allen, you can out throw. Right. And Brock Purdy can't do that, which is one of his shortcomings. But man, and I keep bringing up guts, and
if he couldn't, he would have sunk long ago.
Right.
Right.
Guts, preparation, and it's not like teams don't know the area of the field the 49ers like to throw the football in. So there's a lot of players in the middle of the football field, and he still finds the window, throws it early, and has the guts to throw it there where other quarterbacks are going to pat the ball because they don't trust it, and they're afraid of throwing in this tight window on time.
100%. I mean, the other thing that bugs me is Purdy's an A+ from the neck up, work ethic, toughness, blah, 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 blah. But you and I have had this conversation, and I bring it up more and more the older I get, that when the Steelers are looking at quarterbacks in the first round next year and there's 5 of them to pick from, they all better have that. That just gets you to the card table nowadays. You know what I mean? Like that's a prerequisite to walk in the door. That's the ante to get you in the card game. Like if you don't have that, you better be the most talented guy on the planet. Like I could have a defensive tackle that doesn't ever watch tape, even at the NFL level, and still be a great player. But I don't want to hear, oh, you're going to love this kid. He works hard. First guy in, last guy out. I'm like, if you don't have that, I can't even talk to you, let alone, I mean, it's that hard,
And there's always there's always the classic job interview thing where you hear, and I think actually the Steelers, Will Howard was one of the guys. You hear him at the combine or whatever it is, and there's the
Gruden thing,
and they're like, oh well, if you don't draft me, you're gonna regret it, and I'm gonna beat you every single time I play against you. And you're just like, okay, yawn. Every guy says the same thing.
Says that. Right. And they believe it, but that doesn't mean you beat Josh Allen.
Sure, maybe, but yeah, and
right.
Hopefully there's some film evidence of that, and the chip on your shoulder can be real, and sometimes it's not, sometimes it is. But what makes a quarterback great is kind of being maniacal. And being a nerd about it. Like, you can't just vibe your way through. It's not like basketball where you're just that talented. And obviously it's not like other athletes don't put a lot of time and effort into their game either. But there's just such a talent gap, and you can vibe your way through and be an awesome player and be a high pick and be successful. If you're not a football nerd as a quarterback, you're done.
Yeah. And I'm just using Purdy as an example because he's topical, but whoever the Niners play in week 1, the quarterback on the other sideline is probably as lunatic as you. You know what I mean? He's not just like, this is kind of fun. I mean, there's the Jay Cutlers out there, but they don't last,
Yeah. Jay Cutler just had he probably
super gifted,
worked harder than it seemed like, but just he always had the look on his face where it's like, this guy doesn't really care much, does he? And
right.
Played the role. He was a character actor for sure. All right. Thanks to everybody for your
stuff.
questions. Apologies to the ones we did not get that we did not get to, but actually we've got a couple of good ones that we might fill in on tomorrow's episode, and maybe even make it into a whole show, putting our GM hats on. And
I like it.
If we had an expansion franchise, putting together our own team, which players would we pick first? So maybe it's a good opportunity for a head-to-head Peacock versus Williamson expansion draft on tomorrow's episode of Peacock and Williamson. Tune in and subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast.